Hello viewers, welcome to this edition of the Bantaba. This week we have a special guest, the Honorable Minister of Information, Honorable Lamin Queen jammeh. Sir, welcome to the Standard Bantaba.
Thank you very much for having me on the Standard Bantaba, Mr. Manneh.
Fantastic. Honorable Minister, you hold a very important position in government. But to start with, you hail from Sitanunku in the upper Nyomi district. Can you talk briefly about your early childhood and the circumstances that shaped it?
Okay. Thank you very much. As you have rightly said, yes, I am a native of Sitanunku. Sitanunku is in Upper Nyomi district, in the wider North Bank region. I was brought up in the community there, and it was also there where I did my primary education at the local primary school, Sitanunku Primary. Then from Sitanunku Primary, I proceeded to Berending Secondary Technical School, where I stayed for 4 years. Then graduated from there and went into teaching as an unqualified teacher initially. I taught as an unqualified teacher for 4 years. Then I went to Gambia College, where I did my primary teacher certificate, PTC. Then upon graduation, I went back into teaching until 1996, when I was appointed the district chief of Upper Nyomi. So it was from that time on that I left teaching and went into traditional administration. Then I stayed as a district chief for another 16 years. When again I was elevated and appointed the governor of North Bank region. Effectively, this was from
2012?
February 2012 to February 2017.
Yes, that's correct.
When the APRC government fell from governance because we had lost the 2016 December election, the historic political revolution of the Gambia. So, following the fall of the APRC government, my services were terminated with retirement.
Yes.
I was paid my benefits, specifically my gratuity, and started receiving my monthly pension allowances. Then again, because politics has become a career, when the arena was built, I became a member of the National People's Party NPP, and we went into the second round of elections in 2021, when again President Bao had that landslide victory in the December polls of 2021. Following this were the National Assembly elections, and just after the National Assembly elections, a new cabinet was formed in which I have been appointed as the Minister of Information of the Gambia.
Honorable Minister, let's break it down in stages. Indeed, you have a rich track record of public service. You were one of few chiefs, even at the time of the former government, during the jammeh days, who holds a degree or some sort, which was quite uncommon during those days. Could you just briefly tell us why you felt the need to go to the University of the Gambia, and specifically, what did you study there?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is true that I went to the University of the Gambia. The inspiration, by and large, came primarily from two people. One was my own brother, the late Mohammed Jammeh. At the time of his death, Mohammed was the head of the Faculty of Public Administration, Economics and Public Administration, something like that, at the UTG. He was one person who was very key in providing me the inspiration to achieve higher heights in learning. And the other one is also my own headmaster, who is also my uncle and father. This is a veteran educationist by the name of Mr. Sankare, Keba Sankare of Latikunda, Yiringanya. These are two people who are very, very important in providing the requisite inspiration that was needed to motivate me to climb higher heights on the education ladder. My brother Mohammed was somebody within the family. He was very much concerned in laying a solid foundation for everybody to be educated, beginning from him to the lower level. Because of this, you will remember that I said I went to Berendin Secondary Technical School. While I was in the Gambia College studying to become a qualified teacher with PTC, Mohammed was at the time studying at Njala University College in Sierra Leone. And from his stipend, each time he is coming, he would buy me textbooks. Upon arrival here at home, he would supply me with these textbooks and give me all the words of wisdom that would make me accept the direction he was showing me. Each time, in those days, there wasn't anything like the internet and so on, but each time he wrote to me a letter, he would ensure that it is included in this letter, keep the midnight oil boiling, referring to the candle, encouraging me to let me boil the candle oil in order to read, in order to learn. So these were the circumstances in which I was, and it paid dividend that at a certain stage in my development, after graduating from Gambia College, I decided, in those days you do what we call private candidates for the GCE, General Certificate of Education. I, in other words, entered the GCE as a private candidate and got some qualification. Precisely I studied 4 subjects at the GCE, English language, economics, history and government, and had a grade 3 in each of them. So when the APRC government came to power and the University of the Gambia was established, it provided me the opportunity to have access to university education. This had happened at a time when I was already a chief of the district. In fact, even before the advent of the UTG, there was a point in time that, given encouragement from other people, I thought of resigning from that position in order to go and learn.
Yes, sir.
I remember the likes of Mr. Suare. He is also a veteran educationist, retired now, who is serving in the public service. Suare had sent me prospectus while he was reading at Birmingham University in UK. So, but then I had a conflict in the pursuance of this desire, because whereas I valued education very high, the traditionalists who were also around me at the time, the villagers, the elders, were very much interested in keeping the chieftaincy position back at home. And in the end, I decided that yes, this is personal to me, but the other one is driven by community need. Let me give it the preference it requires, and my own, I leave it with Allah. So that was what had happened until the University of the Gambia was established, that I knew was about to miss. Allah has brought it. Then I applied for the program at UTG, and I was given admission. And really what I read was development studies.
Amazing.
Development studies was my major area of study, and my minor area was sociology. Yes. So that was it.
You served as chief initially under jammeh, and then you served as governor under the same administration. Some people might, be curious to ask, personally, what do you think motivated you to toil and to moil in the interest of a man largely regarded as a murderous, corrupt dictator by many?
Yes, a lot of names have been given to jammeh. Some of them terrible, some of them very attractive. All these were given to the man. But then you will also bear me witness, Mr. Manneh, that I had a relationship with President Jammeh at the time. The relationship I had was more driven by my role than it was by personal anything. All right? Society has functional prerequisites. In order for society to work, society must be able to identify what the societal needs are. It must be able to identify what roles are needed in order to meet those needs, and identify the assignment of responsibility to individual performance. It was in the light of this that positions were created. It was in the interest of this that as an actor in the society, I was identified and entrusted the responsibilities that I had, so that given the responsibilities I had in the APRC regime, would to some degree qualify me to understand the president at the time to some degree, But whatever knowledge I might have acquired about him would also have had its own limitations. Limitations because the proximity between a chief and the president is quite a range. The responsibility, the distance, the relationship between a governor and the president had a range, especially in those days. So that was that. I knew His Excellency President Jammeh at the time in his official capacity mainly. Little did I know about him in his private capacity. So the relationship was based more on official than the informal.
President Jammeh lost power in elections in 2016 after meeting his match in a coalition of political parties. You predicted a 90% victory for him at the time. Did the result or the outcome of the 2016 poll surprise you personally? Did it shock you in a way?
Yes, political pronouncements are not sometimes as real as scientifically they may be required. Put differently, understand it this way, that hardly would you see anybody on the political platform who would openly accept defeat.
Yeah.
Nobody accepts political defeat on the platform. Unless you go to the ballot, you don't accept that. It is a weak political tendency for any politician to accept defeat in his campaign while on the platform with the audience. That is that. But there were significant indications at the time that the APRC was losing grip of what it had.
The signs were there on the wall.
Yes, and this is the exact words that one of my chiefs used to tell me. When we, in private, when we interact at the time, one of them or a few of them would tell me, Governor, the signs are already on the walls. So that is the private life. This is different from our public image. In private, people discuss the real.
I'm sorry, it's not funny.
In public, sometimes they discuss the desirable.
Yeah.
All right? So that was that. So that people had 100% surprise may not therefore hold. That there was reasonable suggestion from indications around, near and far, that the APRC was losing grip of what it had. And the possibility of a change could not have been ruled out. Yes.
Why did you advocate for the former president to be made king in the Gambia?
Thank you very much, Mr. Manneh. Society has a value system. Society has a reward system. The value system of society demands that when rights are done, when good is performed, it is rewarded good. It is rewarded good, and when bad things are done, the actions are rewarded by punishment. As a traditionalist, while I was a chief, myself and my peers were strongly attached to the maintenance and development of traditional culture in this country and probably beyond. It was our realization that whilst modern civilization was growing so fast, so widely, it was doing all this at the detriment of traditional culture, which was almost diminishing. It was losing grip. It was being reduced in scope. It wasn't given the right value of attention that we thought it required. And because of this, we became concerned that development starts from thinking. From thinking, development goes into sharing through discussions. And that it is time now that we put up an agenda that will attract public attention for a thorough discussion. And we felt at the time that given all the innovations in development that the APRC government under President Jammeh had done, it was not going to be a bad start to have President Jammeh becoming a constitutional king. Because of the numerous good deeds at the time that government had done, especially in the development sphere, considering the construction of roads with the advent of AFPRC. When the Kerawan Road was built, you remember, the giant AFPRC General Hospital then in Faratenye, the Gambia Television, and a lot more. So it became our thinking that it wouldn't be a bad start to start with him, because it was something that had not existed, because the Gambia is a new creation that had been formed after the partitioning of Africa by the European powers in 1884. It is relatively a new creation. That in the traditional setting, there wasn't anything like Gambia. All what we had at the time were the traditional lower Gambian states, the state of Nyomi, or the kingdom of Nyomi, Badibu, Kombo, Kiang, Jara, etc. And because nothing had ever existed like that, there wasn't any, traditionally there wasn't any clan, any family, any clan, any group of people who could have been identified as the traditional heads of the Gambia. And because this did not happen, it did not exist, we felt, because it is going to be a new creation, it has to be defined by law. How could it be defined by law? Through consultations, through dialogue, through sharing with the Gambian population, in whom lies the sovereignty of the land. A group like that was what we had. And we were, of course, very much aware that the authority to do this was in nowhere except in the Gambian people. Yes.
Eventually the idea failed, and generally, Honorable Minister, many people criticized you and others for advocating such move. Personally, do you have any regrets about the issue?
You see, in a democracy, unless you do not respect your partner, you cannot blame people for thinking what their thoughts are. Even the modern setting of what we call modern democracy was an idea that had developed from somewhere. When the Greeks thought of democracy in the city-states then, little did they know that it was going to earn a global influence. It has happened. So we felt that we had the democratic rights to think whatever our thoughts were, and what was more important is our responsibility to share this with our Gambian partners. And to the extent that it would be developed would depend on the acceptance or the rejection of the Gambian people.
Consequently, Jammeh's government fell, and of course the euphoria that greeted or that met the fall of the Jammeh presidency has since been largely disillusioned. And you went ahead and joined the National People's Party. Why?
Thank you very much again for that question. You see, my philosophy is based on the thinking of what we call in political literature divine rights theory. I believe that leadership is destined only by Allah. At the right time, at the right place, under the right circumstances, it is bestowed in the person. And because of this strong belief in me, I made a conclusion in 1987. Prior to 1987, up to 1987 presidential election, I was more sympathetic to the opposition. But because I felt that, yes, in 1981, there was an attempted coup d'etat in the Gambia, the rebellion had happened, which is sufficiently explained by in Sadauda's book, The Kaira.
That's true.
A lot of people had suffered. Then, subsequently, there was a government policy of recovering the economy, and they call it ERP, Economic
Recovery Program, yes, under Dauda.
All right. That required also retrenchment of the civil service.
That's right.
The government felt that the civil service was overloaded and that people had to be retrenched. Then there was serious scarcity of our staple food, rice. Within those periods in the 80s, I felt that sufficient conditions had happened for people to make a new realization of voting out the PPP government. But I also accepted that if people had failed in this, if the people did not accept to bring about a change, providing an alternative to the PPP government, then whatever would have been happening, I would also join them, based on the understanding that, yes, you can be keeping yourself onto something thinking it was right and correct when you were the person in the mistake side. I made the conclusion that if PPP wins in 1987, I would also write to the PPP as a political institution and become a member, so long as acceptance is given to my application. And I made the commitment that from that time on, I will not subscribe myself to anything except what is brought about by Allah. So because of this thinking, I joined the PPP. I wrote my application and went to the PPP. My application was accepted and I became a member of the PPP. Up to 1994, when the July 22nd revolution took place, I said it could be a test on my integrity, that I have committed myself to Allah, that from that time on, I will only be supporting what is brought by Him. So it was an easy ride for me I had. Then I rendered my support to the military regime that was later metamorphosed into the July 22nd movement, which of course further developed into the APRC. So I became a founder member, if you like, of all those institutions. with the readiness to give my support to what has been brought by Allah. Yes.
So that explains your joining of the National People's Party then in detail.
Yes. Again, in 2016 December elections, when APRC lost, Gambia had a new government. It was a government led by a coalition of parties. And as soon as matters, the dust has settled, I became a supporter of President Barrow's agenda, knowing that he was what Allah had destined for the material time. I became a supporter of President Barrow, even before the formation of the National People's Party. Okay? So it was in this struggle where we were. National Assembly elections followed the presidential. The first National Assembly election that came, I supported the UDP candidate in my area. One, because I had an important engagement by important authorities in the UDP who had solicited my support to the candidate. That was one. And the other reason is that from analysis that I made myself, I knew that the coalition, the government was a coalition one, formed by a coalition of parties. But again, when you have, as a parent, if you have children, the natural tendency is that you advise people, your children, to follow the order in which they senior each other. So I knew that in the setup, it wasn't difficult for me to give my support to the UDP, because the UDP was an important senior member of the group. So that was why I supported UDP. And when the NPP came into being, after the separation, I, of course, working on the basis of my philosophy, did not have any option but to become a member of the NPP. Yes.
Honorable Minister, obviously you have the pedigree, you have the qualifications, but there is a general feeling that even though you have the political clout, let me put it this way, and the pedigree, of course, there are not many people actually imagined former jammeh loyalists like yourself to be appointed in key government positions in this new administration. In your case, how did you come to be appointed by President Barrow?
Thank you very much. In the first place, I would doubt why people would not accept the acceptance or the appointment of people of my caliber into government positions of this nature at the level of cabinet, simply because they were members, serving members of the APRC government. Yeah. I do not take that as a reasonable justification at all. Okay. It was constitutionally required that the Gambia runs as a democracy. Working on the basis of a democratic setting, people were entitled to support the political parties that they desired, and therefore supporting any political party was not a crime, as far as I can see. The untested generalization that people would put to say, because this was the general picture of President Jammeh, therefore his regime, and anybody therein was affected by it, cannot be something reasonable, in my view. Any government that comes constitutionally would originate from the will of the people. and it is only by the consent of the people that it can survive. Jammeh came through a military coup d'etat that was unconstitutional. But the AFPRC later legitimized themselves through performance. Legitimacy is all about the society's ability to accept a regime. And it wasn't in the absence of anybody that we were all in this country, and it was here where the legitimate support of the citizenry was given to the APRC, which later became, from AFPRC later becoming APRC. The APRC. So for anybody to sit down and think that because Mr. X had been part of, it is only active people who can be part of the functionary of the state. The inactive, the docile, the inactive would not, and it is good to be an active citizen of any state. It is really very good in my view. So I therefore discredit any of such understanding that because Mr. X had been, it depends on what that Mr. X had done.
That's fair enough.
See, people must not be valued for what they have not been done or what they have not done. People should be made accountable to only what they did. And the testimonies that were provided in the jammeh Commission, as well as in the TRRC, so make distinction between people based on what they have done.
Honorable Minister, you are born Lamin Jammeh, if I'm correct. Where did you get the pseudonym Queen? What does it mean? Where did it come from?
Yes, you know, it is a tradition in my area, in Nyomi, probably because of the proximity that Nyomi had with Europeans from the time of exploration up to the time of colonization. Probably given this relationship, Nyomi had developed that tradition. And the tradition was that in my community, the first son born to a mother usually would have two names. One is your real name that is given to you by your father, and the other one, because you are the firstborn to the mother, your mother and her peers would also give you a name.
Yeah.
And it was from my mother and her peers that the name Queen originated. And this is a common name in Nyomi. If you go there, Nyomi, Queen, and Edward, all these, you will bear me witness, are names of Europeans. But as I said, probably given the proximity they had with the Tubabs, they had to influence each other's lives in a way. So going to Nyomi, you find Queens, you find Edward, you find George. These are all European names.
What do you hope to achieve during your stint here as Minister of Information?
Thank you very, very much. Fundamentally, is to achieve the core mandate of the ministry. The core mandate of the ministry being the provision of relevant information for public consumption from the side of government, and to create also the enabling environment for the media to contribute towards meeting these specific objectives. By this way, we hope that information readily available, proactively disclosed, giving free access to everybody would lead us to another stage of development in the information value chain. And this is going to be the stage when rumor mongers would have been proven futile, because they rumor because information is not readily available.
Yeah.
But if information is readily available in a proactive manner, it will be useless, because wherever you want to speculate something, they will tell you, we already know that. So that is the biggest target we have as a ministry and as a minister in this ministry.
Honorable Minister, generally, what are your views on the TRRC?
TRRC?
Yes.
Views like?
Like, what do you think of the TRRC in general? The process, everything, testimonies, revelations. What is your impression of the whole process?
Yes, I think functionally TRRC had been very good. Very good, because it was, a lot of people became suspicious at the tail end of the APRC regime. But the extent to which human rights had been violated, the extent to which these violations were done, were truly a surprise to many people.
Including you?
Including myself. If they were known as they are known today, probably the efforts of bringing down the APRC regime would have been earlier than it was. So for this reason, I think TRRC was very good. It was a very good thinking, very good thought that it was formed and that it had performed its duties. Very importantly, again, the conclusions were done, and because the origin, the genesis of the ideas of the TRRC had originated from the spirits of democracy. It was by that same democratic spirit that the recommendations were forwarded and finally granted government-wide paper accepting the recommendations of the TRRC. So that is also another area, another proof area that explains the democratic spirit of the leadership of President Barrow. Despite whatever critique one may try to advance, the minimum acceptable is that you cannot reduce President Barrow and his regime to an undemocratic one.
What do you think should happen to jammeh personally? I mean, I know this is not the area for you, but if you have a personal opinion on probably
yes,
what...
my personal opinion may not be important anymore, because should my personal opinion conflict with the institutional opinion, you know, the institutional naturally stands. So what is important now is the institutional opinion, and that is contained in the recommendations of the TRRC, and of course to which the government had given approval in the white paper.
Honorable Minister, we've taken so much of your time. We have now come to the concluding stages of this marathon interview, but one final question, if you'll just indulge us. I know this is probably, let me just put it this way. Who do you think is at fault in the rift between Ousainou Darboe and his political godson, Adama Barrow?
Who do I think is at fault?
Yes, in the fight between the two men.
Yes, you know, again, I would repeat that my ideas, my thoughts are not very important in that. What is very important is the judgment of the Gambian.
But you must have a personal opinion now.
No. I'm saying, where your personal opinion cannot give effect to anything, personal opinion does not matter anymore.
But some people would like to hear it nevertheless.
No, but I would continue to repeat that what I take to be paramount is the judgment delivered by the Gambian people. And that judgment is in the open for everybody to see. So if it is in consonance with my personal, then I'm a comfort. If it contravenes my personal, then I have an internal conflict within myself. But what is more important is the judgment delivered by the Gambian people. More importantly, in the last December 4th presidential election results.
Is President Barrow good for the Gambia?
President Barrow, in my opinion, is excellent for the Gambia, especially for this transitional period. The transition from generally accepted dictatorship to a democratic system. In my view, the types are not many who could actually handle this transition. It takes a lot of the person to enable that system to work.
You think?
Yes. The perseverance, the tolerance, that President Barrow had demonstrated and is still demonstrating to the democratization process is very great. And I think it is only, his types are not many. In my candid opinion, his types are not many. If the test had been put to some other people, it may be seriously defaulted. So that is why I said to your question, in my opinion, he is not only good, but he is excellent as President of the Gambia, given the important transition that we are passing through from a generally accepted dictatorship to democratic governance.
People close to you say you are a kind-hearted man and a good Muslim. What's your motivation? What keeps you going?
Islam dictates that. My only motivation is Islam. Yes. My only motivation to be what I am, other than the socialization that I am passing through, is fundamentally Islam. Islam dictates how I should live. Islam dictates what I should do. Islam dictates what I should not do. And it is the binding principle, as it is to every Muslim, especially if you want to be a good Muslim.
Honorable Minister of Information, Lamin Queen, jammeh. It's been our pleasure, sir, talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Viewers, that brings the curtain down on this week's marathon interview with the Honorable Minister of Information. Until we come your way again next week, have a pleasant weekend.